GM, good morning. Welcome to the Milk Road Show, the daily crypto show that's as satisfying as finding free Wi-Fi when you're traveling. I'm your host, Jay Hamilton. Today, we're joined by Kyle Reidhead, co-owner and head of research at Milk Road. Now, in today's episode, we're answering a couple critical questions that I know are on your minds right now. Is the crypto bottom finally in? And when are prices going to start to go up? We're actually going to look at some very important charts. So if you are listening to this on podcast, I would recommend you might want to go over to YouTube and see all the charts we're going to go through today. Also, I just want to remind you all quickly that starting this week, we are now publishing at 3 p.m. Eastern every day instead of our previous 9 a.m. Eastern. So make sure you update so you are getting the news every day from us. Before we jump in, if you've got some ETH and you want to make some yield on it, you're going to want to check out our sponsor, Kelp DAO. Get ready because your reward farming game is about to level up. Introducing Gain, powered by Kelp, your degen concierge. Gain is an automated vault launched by Kelp that maximizes rewards for ETH users. It offers one-click access to airdrops and points from leading L2s like Linea, Scroll, Karak, and more. Here's how it works. Head over to milkroad.com/kelp gain and spot airdrop gain. Get a complete overview of how your assets are deployed and the rewards and points you stand to gain. With just a few clicks, deposit ETH or SETH or liquid staking tokens into the smart vault. That's it. The best part, once you deposit, you're issued a liquid token, AG ETH, enabling you to participate in DeFi on Pendle, Spectra, Lyra, Splice, and others. Gain is already live and you can go check it out for yourself today. Just head over to milkroad.com/kelp gain and get started. Kyle, welcome back to the show. Excited for this one because you've been doing a bunch of research over the past week, looking at some charts. I can always tell when you're obsessing on the charts, and you wanted to come on today and share what these charts are showing you about where we are in the current cycle and if we are at the bottom for prices in crypto.
Yeah, well, it's probably the worst time to be doing this because in 3 hours from now, we're going to have the decision on the Fed rate cut, which is like the next Super Bowl, I guess, and everyone cares about it. And probably the market's going to be very, very volatile. The good news is kind of what I'm showing. There's a lot of charts that are in prices for different assets that are at critical moments in their sort of chart here, and in terms of resistance or support or different trends. And probably we're going to get some answers here from the rate cuts in terms of how the market reacts and we'll see. Now, there's a good chance we also overreact and like it might break through a resistance or support, which it normally wouldn't do, but it does just based off of how much people really care about this rate cut. And so when I'm sharing all these charts here and we're kind of we're looking through it, this is more to guide you and help you understand, well, after the markets make their decision in terms of how they're going to react to these rate cuts, where are they at? And again, it doesn't matter what happens like the next minute after the decision is made. It's like, let's look over the next few days here and see where it's at. But hopefully what this can do is guide us and tell us, are we at the bottom? And so that's what I'm going to try and break down for us here today.
Great. Okay. So we've got, we're going to look at BTC. We're going to look at ETH. We're going to look at NVIDIA. We're going to look at a whole bunch here. Start us off with what you're seeing in the charts right now.
Yeah. So first, the reason that we're bringing this up now, and I know people have been asking, have we bottomed for the last like 7 months? Because we've literally been in a downtrend for since March. And the reason why it makes sense to start asking the question, have we bottomed out now, is because we recently, and this is back in September 6th, we put in another low, but it was actually a higher low to the previous one, which was back on August 5th. And this is in total crypto market cap we're looking at right now. So every single basically month, we've been putting in lower and lower lows, right? And lower highs. Now we haven't put in a higher high. And so we can't get too excited yet, but we finally, for the first time in 7 months, put in our our higher low. That is really key. Maybe we are out of this downtrend and we are working our way up. And so this is sort of the first sort of like aha moment. I was like, hey, maybe we did bottom. And so typically what you do is you look at a chart, then you want to look at a bunch of other charts to see in terms of pricing and technical analysis, does it apply? Do other things look the same? And then you want to go, don't just look at charts. Don't just look at TA. That's never enough. Then you want to zoom out, look at the fundamentals and go, what does that say? Where does macro saying? What are historical prices saying? What are on-chain metrics saying if you're talking about crypto? and in terms of where the market might go from that. And so you want to kind of look at both. And so we'll start with the chart, which I just shown you. We'll look at a bunch more, and then we'll get into some fundamental stuff. So starting out here, we see, okay, total crypto market cap is just made its higher low for the first time in 7 months. Now what do? Well, let's scan the market. First, we have NVIDIA, which is kind of the most important stock, at least over the last couple of years. And I showed this a couple weeks ago. Jay, I think you were off on your honeymoon, but with Zeneca, and basically said we were at this very important moment for NVIDIA where it's on this sort of upward trend line or ascending trend line since it put in its low back in October 2022. And basically what's happened is 2 times before this, it's bounced off that line and then just shot up. It did it back again when it hit its low. Then it did it at the end of 2023. And then we hit it for the first time back in August. And then we hit it again. This is when I think I showed it. We were close to hitting it early September. And what's happened since then? Well, we've pretty well shot up pretty far past it. Now, in the last week, we're on a weekly chart here. The last day or so, markets don't know what to do. So nothing's really moving, right? That's why you see a bit of red there. But it looks like, anyway, NVIDIA just blasted off this trend line. So that is a pretty bullish sign. If we break below it, I'd be a little bit scared. So far, we're above it, and we're quite high above it just in the last week. So that's good to see. Again, it's really going to matter on what happens here with the rate cuts and how the market decides to react to that. But so far, that looks pretty bullish, which would lead you to believe the market has decided, hey, we're going to continue to go up. And so maybe crypto total market cap has reached its bottom. But let's continue on. If you look at the S&P 500, this thing is already at all-time highs, which is a little bit wild. Nothing really is at all-time highs again. S&P and I guess gold as well. But just surpassed all-time highs this week, which is a very bullish sign, right? How the heck is crypto doing so bad, yet you have the S&P 500 already at all-time highs? So if we're wondering where's the market going, even with the fear around these rate cuts and what's going to happen here, you still see the market, the S&P 500, hitting all-time highs. So that is I would say, a bullish signal. If this was bleeding out, then I'd be scared, but that looks pretty darn good. So let's jump back into crypto. This is a very, very interesting way to look at what's been going on in Bitcoin over the last 7 months. So what I have up on the chart here is Bitcoin from last cycle to this cycle on its monthly. So we're looking at monthly candles here and how well it's performed. And basically last cycle, Bitcoin hit, what was it, like 69K or whatever, but really it closed at around 61.3, okay? And it closed and it opened at that in 2 separate months. And then it also ranged and did the same thing earlier. Remember, there was a double top last cycle at around 59, okay? And so anywhere between 59 and the 61 is sort of this like resistance from last cycle, okay? Where we couldn't really close past that. We couldn't get above it. This cycle, ever since we went past all-time highs, we have not closed below it. So we've actually flipped last cycle's resistance into support. Now, every month we have gone down and down and down and down in terms of the highs, but we have never closed below that same resistance level from last cycle. Even right now, we're sitting almost right on it, but again, we are not going below it and closing below it. So that is really key. If we can hold that, I feel pretty strong that all we are doing is actually just testing the previous all-time highs, and we just keep doing it, right? Different way to look at it. I know the previous all-time highs was 69, but we hit 69 for like a minute. So like, in technical analysis, you don't really count that always. You kind of count where you open and close on a longer term basis. And we've been hitting that. So that's quite interesting. If we were to close below this, okay, maybe we have not bottomed yet. But right now we're holding above. So we'll see. Again, don't know what's going to happen in just 3 hours from now. But right now that looks pretty strong. And if we can bounce off that, that's going to be very, very strong support for us to just fly off of. And you can see Bitcoin going big time from there. So we'll see what happens. But that's an interesting way to look at it. Another way to look at it is this is Bitcoin on the weekly. Same chart or same line that I drew with NVIDIA that I just showed you earlier. The same thing here with Bitcoin. Bitcoin has tapped off this line twice since bottoming out again back in October 2022. And then we're actually kind of nowhere near it. We're floating up way above it now, and we're not kind of near that line, which is nice. Now, there's potential that we come down and hit that line. That would be really bad for NVIDIA and ETH probably because they would be well below the line. But it looks quite strong there. Now, what's really interesting about this chart is if I then zoom out a little bit, let's go back to last cycle. The same thing happened. We tapped off this line twice, okay, 2, 3 times, I guess, actually in total. But let's call this once. Same with here. We did it twice. And then one more time here. And then we just floated above it. And then all of a sudden we took off into what we would call this is the banana zone, right? it looks very, very similar to where we are right now. We came down, we never quite touched it, and then we just like took off. We're actually sitting exactly that right now, which is quite interesting. Let's zoom out again and go to the cycle before that. Same thing, right? We tap this line a bunch of times again, this ascending line that basically comes off the very bottom of the bear market. Same thing, we tapped on it a bunch, and then we never really tapped it, but we didn't go too crazy. Then all of a sudden, boom, banana zone. And again, I can do it one more time. All 4 cycles we did the exact same thing. Bitcoin early on in its first year, after it bottomed out, it kept hitting this line, and then it never really got close to it in the next year, and then it took off in a banana zone. That's exactly where we're sitting right now. So that's quite interesting. It doesn't mean that this is always going to happen just because it's only happened 3 times previously. That's not a lot of data points. So like, don't take this as like gold and this is how it must go. But it's quite interesting to see the same sort of pattern playing out once again. And to me, that looks pretty bullish. Although again, we'll see what happens. This could come down and touch this line. It would be very surprising and very scary if it actually broke below it, unless it was because of like COVID or whatever, like a reason like that, where like markets just nuke, but then it just jumps back so fast. It's not really that big of a deal, which is why, again, I don't worry about when I look at COVID here, the COVID dump, it dumped below, but it took a couple months or a couple weeks in this case, and we were back up and it was all good. So anyway, that's kind of what I'm seeing here on Bitcoin. ETH, a little bit scarier. Okay. ETH has been all over this line for its first year and has been all over it for the last couple weeks. Okay. It has not broken below it. At least it has not closed below it. So that is good. But as we sit here waiting for a Fed decision, we are right on this line. Now, if the Fed decision goes well, I'm sure we bounce off this and we do quite well here. If it does not go that well and we break below, that could be quite scary. Now, again, when I zoom out on ETH, if I look back at last cycle, same thing played out, right? It looks almost identical to Bitcoin. And this is on a 2-year time frame. So from 2019 all the way to 2021, boom, and then banana zone, same as before. The other scenario that could play out here, if ETH happened to break below this line, is there was also, and this would be a bit of a shorter time frame, so it doesn't look exactly, but one thing I can point out is there's another trend line, which is right here on ETH. This looks almost identical to this. Okay, if you see this, how this looks here, that looks very much the same. And for those that are listening, all I'm doing is I just moved the trend line to a steeper line because ETH actually skyrocketed off its bottom, kind of like what it did here. And then it came down, touched that line a couple times, and then broke below it. And then it went way below that line until finally climbing back up. Again, this looks a little bit weird because of COVID, but just forget about that. We would have just continued to go up here. There is a chance that that's what's happening here. And we're just touching, and then we're going to go below. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. But again, this is on like a 6-month, 9-month time frame, whereas this one's already 2 years. So it would make more sense if we're just looking at historicals that it's this. And I think we all are hoping that it is this. But let's see how things play out. Last one we'll look at here in terms of crypto is Solana. Again, you can put the same trend line. They all are playing this sort of same idea here. But again, Sol, like Bitcoin, is way, way, way above that trend line from its bottom, right? Because it's outperformed so much. And now it's just been in this wedge, and we keep hitting this support, which you could put the support here. You could also put it up here from in terms of like where we've closed at, which is right where we're sitting at right now, which is 128. Anything below 128, we always wick back up to this 128. And so again, are we about to bounce off this because this is support for us? I don't know, but we have support playing out right now for Bitcoin on the monthly, for Sol right now, and this is on the weekly, for ETH right now, weekly or daily. Everything is sitting on support in crypto right now. And so it's a very much make or break moment for crypto. But because we have hit that higher low, that is a good sign, but we're going to have to see what happens here. Coin, by the way, I showed this one too. I think with Zeneca, so I'll just pop this up for you guys. We did break below and we closed below it on the weekly. So that's not ideal, but we have tapped it twice since. And so it's trying to get back above. Who knows what's going on with coin. The last thing you want to look at with the rate cut decision here is what's going to happen with the Dixie. I talked about this. I think Jay and I talked about this a couple weeks ago. We did maybe a whole episode on this. The Dixie is what really matters. If the Dixie goes lower, like this arrow on the chart here, this is not TA. This is just, I think I screenshotted a picture of this. But basically, if the Dixie breaks lower than its trend that it's been on, this range it's been on since 2022, that's the signal that we are going up and we've bottomed. And it has tapped it like the same line, like 4 or 5 times of last, what are we on a weekly here? Yeah, last 5 weeks. So we have not done that on these other ones. All the other times that we've tapped this level, it's one time and then we've gone up, right? One time we've gone up, one time we've gone up. Now we're just sitting here. And so there's a good chance, I think, that this is going to go down especially because we know we're beginning to cut rates, which means the dollar generally gets weaker. So we'll see what happens. If the markets puke, that means everyone's moving back into risk off and into safety, which means the dollar will actually do well, which is weird. But we'll see what happens. But this is the other thing I'm really, really looking at here. And we're probably going to get a signal on all of these like today, today, or like, let's say this week. It's very much make or break time in markets. So now this is all price action. And as good as that is, it's not enough, right? You need to zoom out. You need to look at other things. And so take this with a grain of salt. But what you really want to do is look at fundamentals, on-chain metrics, et cetera. And you can get more of an idea from there of where these prices might go.
Okay, before we jump in and look at some fundamentals, Kai, based on the TA, I think one thing that we talk a lot about on the show is probabilities. What would you say is the probability that we are at the bottom right now in crypto markets?
So that's actually a good question, but can't really be answered until you look at the rest of it, because what's really controlling the price is not the TA, right? It's more people's reaction to macro, to rate cuts, to on-chain metrics, to historical prices, right? Like TA or just like price action is just a collection of the psychology and the what all the participants across the market are doing, right? And so again, we've hit this key area, and so I don't know where things are going to go based off it. Seeing the lower high, like that's puts me in probably a higher than 50% chance that we've bottomed out. But again, what really matters, and you can't just only look at these numbers or these charts, what really matters is what's going on in the back end of things. What's going on with the macro, what's going on with all the fundamental stuff. That's what will give you the probabilities. So let's re-answer that question.
Well, I'm glad you asked, because let's look at that right now and stick around to the end of the show to find out the final probability on all this. Okay, let me pull up here Bitcoin, a chart of Bitcoin's monthly price over each month. What do you see here?
Yeah, so this is just historicals. So when we look at Bitcoin's career, let's call it historical career of 12 years now, 15 years, something like that. How well has it performed? And the good news is, and what date are we in September? I think it's the 18th as we record this. And so the good news is October. Well, one thing is we're already lower than I think what the month is, which is average is 4% or so. Yeah, 4.5% in September. And so like there's room for us to go up and still be a bad September. But October looks really freaking good. So November looks really good. And so does December. Historically, especially in election years, but not just in election years, or you can call it halving years, whatever you want to call it, halving years, election years, even none of those, just always October tends to be very, very good for crypto and for equities. And so historically, in terms of where we are in time frame, it tends to be a bullish month coming up the next 2 months to 3 months and beyond. And so that moves our probabilities in the direction of, okay, we've probably bottomed out, because September usually is where you bottom out in most years.
What about if we look at historicals of crypto, not just Bitcoin?
Yeah. So if you look at the cycles of crypto, they tend to work in similar ways. And we're actually, as much as it's been kind of scary the last 7 months, we've had a bunch of shows in the past saying like, look, this is normal, that in the second year of a bull market or second year after bottoming out, we tend to have these like long drawn out pullbacks. And although it sucks when you're in them, if you just look back at history, and I just showed a bunch of charts of it tapping this line, which is those were big pullbacks. You just didn't quite, you didn't feel it back then because maybe you weren't in the markets. But when you're in it and you feel it, it feels so bad. But actually, we're doing exactly what we've done basically every other cycle. And if you look at where we are in terms of the historical performance, we're right at the point where, at least in the last 2 cycles, we've just gone up only. Not up only, but we've gone up. And so it looks like we are finally at a point where things are looking really good. Now, again, this is just historical stuff. So this doesn't have a huge weight to it, but crypto tends to be very cyclical, so it matters.
All right. What about if we look at liquidity and M2 supply? What do you see in there?
This holds a lot of weight to it, I think. And M2, there's a bunch of different ways to look at global liquidity. This is looking at global M2, and this is a 10-week lead. This is from GMI, Raoul Paul. And basically, they have some indicators that look at where liquidity is going to go. And based off all those data points, they can sort of predict where liquidity is going. And it generally is very accurate. And what's interesting is Bitcoin follows it to an absolute T, most of you guys already know this. And in terms of the 10-week leads of global M2, it's up and up and up starting mid-September, right at the moment we are at right now. And so again, that is super, super bullish. And again, you can look at it from global M2, you can look at it global liquidity. There are different ways you look at it, whether it's from how GMI does it, or if you're just looking at the assets that are in central banks, it's all breaking out right now. And so in some ways, like what we show in our pro to our pro members, which is using I think they're called Capital Wars or whatever the analysis is. They use different ways to look at global liquidity, and it's been broken out since like for months now, and we're kind of way beyond. So that's what we look at. But most of the market looks at sort of just M2, which is just an easier way to look at global liquidity, and it's just beginning to break out. And so I think that's going to just continue to go up. Hard to see Bitcoin or just in general other assets go lower here when we have liquidity that looks like it's breaking out and going up. Generally, historically, it never goes down in this period. So that would be very odd to see liquidity go up, but then prices go down. So again, if you put that into our weighting, it looks like probably we're hitting resistance on a lot of these, support on a lot of these, and we're going to bounce off of it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I just want to call out that if this comes true, that we would hit roughly 100K Bitcoin by the end of the year.
It's funny. A lot. I think you even made that prediction. I was looking at our predictions from the end of 2023, and I think you said with Bitcoin 100K by the end of the year. And a lot of people have said this. And what's funny is in crypto, like there's still a good chance that happens because when crypto moves, it moves so damn fast. Like people forget that Bitcoin was at like 30K, I think it was it January, and we like doubled in like a month or 2 months when just before the ETFs. So like this stuff moves fast, and so 100 is actually not that far away. We're sitting at what, 60K right now. It's not even a double from here, and we've got 3 of the most bullish months typically in crypto for that to play out. So I'm not saying that it's going to happen, but it definitely can happen is what I'm saying.
Well, and you make a good point because our memory is so short and we're so focused on the immediate term that right now it feels like 100K is forever away, when in actuality it could happen very fast. Let's look at on some on-chain metrics, Kai. What do we see when we look on-chain in terms of active addresses? What's the story there?
Yeah, and so this is more to tell us, part Bitcoin, but more I would say just total crypto market cap, which we looked at in the beginning, is like if liquidity goes up and we're seeing growth in the crypto ecosystem at large, then it's very likely that capital is going to flow into crypto. And right now, if you look at smart contract platform daily active addresses, which is what we have up on the chart here, this is Jamie Coots who pulled this data. It's at all-time highs. And it's in this number, it's 16.86 million. You can get different numbers depending on what you look. We showed the A16Z1 last week with Mike Dudas, and that was at 60 million. I think what this one is it tries to remove bots and different things. And so this one's looking at seeing 60 million. Regardless, the trend is up and it's at all-time highs. And what's interesting is since March, this has just gone up and up and up while prices have gone down and down and down. You don't typically see that. And at some point, it has to revert back and catch up, just like it would with liquidity if liquidity gets too far up. And so I think, and again, if you think of the divergence, we have a divergence here of active addresses and price going down, but active addresses up. We have a divergence in liquidity up, price down. We also have a divergence in crypto prices versus the S&P 500, right? At some point, these are all going to have to come back and converge and come back together. The question is S&P 500 going to come down to meet crypto, or is crypto going to go up to meet S&P 500? And same with active addresses, and same with like all three of these liquidity. And I think all of those are going to continue to go up. And so it would make sense that crypto has to go up to catch up to all three of these divergences. So again, we could weight that into our probabilities. And I would say that leans us more in the direction of probably it's up from here and we have bottomed.
All right, don't give us your probability yet. We're not quite done looking at all these. Let's take a look at on-chain metrics around fees and the impact that has.
So this one has been what's probably affecting Ethereum the most, but probably just a lot of smart contract platforms, is the fact that fees are just going down the last few months, especially in Ethereum's case. And that's because obviously they've launched EIP 4, which was the whole goal, was to lower fees and make it more scalable. And so fees have gone down, down, down. We've never been in a bull market where fees go down. Fees go up in bull markets. But I think and so this has been a big thing on Twitter of people just saying, well, fees are down, ETH can't do well, right? Or probably we can't go back into bull market because there's not enough fees being made. And I think where people miss here is that it's not fees that lead price. It's price that leads fees. And so the moment that the price of crypto goes up, all of a sudden everyone starts using DeFi again, everyone starts trading, and everyone starts going nuts on meme coins and whatever. And then all of a sudden fees go up. It's just naturally how it always has worked since day one. And so we don't need to worry about fees down right now. Unless when prices go up, if fees also don't go up, that could be an issue because it means like prices are up, but no one's actually using any of this stuff. That would be a bad thing. That's never happened. I still don't think that will happen. I think we're going to see prices go up and we're going to see the fees fall as normal. And so I'm not as worried as everyone else is about seeing fees down right now on smart contract platforms. I think that'll just pick up as price goes up. That's how it always works.
Yeah, and if you guys want to learn more about Kyle's thoughts on fees and the impact that they have on price, take a look at last week's episode. We really dove deep into that. Kyle, one more perspective to look at, which is so important, is sentiment. What do we see when we look at sentiment in the market right now?
Yeah, so fear and greed sitting at around 30, I believe, right now. If you scroll up, we can get the exact number here. You just scroll up on that page. It is 45. Okay, I guess we're feeling pretty
33
good.
yesterday, though.
Yeah, exactly. When I looked at it yesterday.
Month.
Yeah, so it's been low. It's been in the 30s to like low 40s. And if you look at the chart kind of over time, and why this matters is we've been quite bearish for the last however many months, right? And why that's a good thing is when people are stuck in fear, it means a lot of people are actually offside, right? A lot of people aren't allocated to crypto at the moment. And so at the moment that all of a sudden markets decide, hey, we're going to go up, and people decide, hey, we're going to come back into crypto, all those people that are stuck in fear and that are not greedy right now, it means they've got stable coins or they've got cash or they're holding, I don't know, gold or stocks or bonds or whatever. It means that it's time for them to move their assets back into crypto. And again, this is why crypto moves so fast, because it's so volatile. People, when they're scared that they don't know where the market's going to go, they just get out, right? And so like, whereas Apple would go down like 2%, Bitcoin will go down like 10%, right? And when all of a sudden we decide, okay, it's risk on, all of a sudden people start allocating, and that's why crypto goes up like 10, 20, 30, 40% in the matter of a couple of days. And so generally when fear is really, really low, and it's been now low quite a while, you've almost see like a double bottom there, but again, a lower high in fear and greed, which is kind of funny. But same idea, you do see a lower high. This is a signal that, hey, maybe we were fear, but now we're starting to move up. And that means sentiment's starting to move forward, but it's coming off pretty well the bottoms. That is a really good signal that things could move upwards from here and probably not downwards. Because when we're sitting at 30 and 32, it's like you can't get much more scared than that. Like, I don't think we've ever seen fear and greed at like 0 or 10 or whatever, right? So another sign that like we're close to bottoming if we haven't already.
Okay, so let me give a summary, and then I want you to give your probability that this is the bottom and what that means for how investors should allocate over the next few weeks. And obviously, as you said at the beginning, take this with a grain of salt, because we were recording this before the Fed makes their announcement, and this episode is going to publish after the right around the exact time that the Fed makes their announcement. So, okay, so we've got on the TA side, we've got ETH, Bitcoin, crypto total market cap, testing some resistance lines, indicating that it is a moment when likely it either goes up
support
lines, or could go down. We've got NVIDIA and the S&P 500 actually looking quite good. So stocks are really indicating that we are in a bullish market. And then on the sentiment, and then on the timing side, we've got October coming, October, November, two of the best months historically. Also, when you look at crypto market cycles, we're at a part where typically we do go up when we look at historicals, not to mention M2 and global money supply is also trending up, which usually means we follow, and on-chain activity also showing a positive direction, trending up, even though prices are down. When you put that all together, what does that say to you?
I mean, in my opinion, it's hard. I don't know until I see what happens with the rate cuts. And so I wanted to say that we don't know what's going to happen here. My assumption is that rate cuts are going to be fine. So it's either going to be just be neutral and people don't care that much. And it's not as big as a thing as we thought. Or it could even go in the bullish range. I think it's going to be more depending on what they say, right? We already know they're cutting, and whether it's 25 or 50, I actually don't think really matters that much. It's more, what do they say to us and tell us? Are we going to start cutting a bunch? Right? And are we doing that out of fear, or are we doing it because we think the economy's strong? Like, we got to wait and hear what they say to us. I think that's what really matters. But ultimately, I don't think that we go down to any more lows. I think that we've reached our low, which was back August 5th. Now, to be clear, that low was around 49K for Bitcoin. We can definitely go lower than the low we put in early September, but I don't think we'll get lower than that. And so I think like if we were to get around this 49, 50K, you're buying, because there's no way, can't say no way, there's never a certainty. There's a small chance that we go any lower than that big low that we put in back in August. And so I think, and I know I've been saying it's accumulation mode for the last few months here, but it really feels like we've bottomed back in August. Again, I don't know that we've bottomed as in today we've bottomed, right? Like we still might go lower than we are now at 60K or whatever we're sitting at. But I don't think we go any lower than we did back in August. And so in that regard, it probably means that we have already hit our low. And I think it's a pretty high chance. I would say 80 to 90+% that August was our low. As for what happens today or tomorrow or this week, like that, I do not know, but I do feel really, really good about Q4 based on all the things we talked about. And so are we at 100K by the end of the year? I don't know, but we are definitely much higher than we are today. And I feel that's an 80 to 90% chance there that we are much higher than we are today. By the end of September, though, that's anyone's guess. We're really going to matter on what happens today and just the next couple of weeks here. But I think we've hit some pretty serious points in the charts. I think they're going to play out well, but I could be eating my words tomorrow. Let's see.
And we've only got 12 days left in September before October starts and Q4 starts. Look, a lot of indicators. I want to know, you guys listening, what do you think? Do you think we've hit the low, or do you think we've got lower to go? Are you guys buying right now because you feel like this is the last chance to get in before the banana zone? As always, we will keep you guys up to date. Tomorrow's episode, we're going to break down the Fed announcement and what comes out from that press conference. We'll let you guys know, because I'm guessing most of you guys aren't tuning in to the FOMC press conference, but we are, because we're nerds and we love that stuff. As always, please smash the like button, hit subscribe, give us a comment that supports the show, and make sure that more people see this stuff. Have yourselves a wicked awesome day. As always, if you liked today's episode, please hit subscribe and make sure you follow us so you don't miss out on the next one. There's also a link in the description to our free 5-minute daily newsletter where we simplify crypto for you while making you laugh. And if you're willing to step up your crypto investing game, we're going to also leave a link for Milk Road Pro. You get access to our portfolio where you can see exactly what we are buying. This is your number one resource to help you invest successfully in crypto. One final note. This show is for educational purposes only, and nothing we say is financial advice. Investing in crypto or any asset is risky, and you should never invest more than you can afford to lose. Thanks so much for listening in, my friends. Have a wicked awesome day.